about what may be happening in baseball. But yes, Mina Kimes, our favorite. We ranked everybody against my will, and Mina won. She always wins. Can we start with the topic that I actually want to talk about with you guys in a real, like, sincere way? Because the Dan Snyder thing, I know we've all given takes about this at this point in the day, but the number one thing I find interesting about this, truly, if I can just like cut to the chase in some sense, is that this is only a story about ethics and misconduct and settlements and allegations and culture, insofar as it is, in fact, to our earlier reference, a story about business and finance. I mean, this is the reason why Dan Snyder feels cornered. It's because the dude is costing fellow owners money, because the gate of the Washington Commanders is the lowest in the league. He has failed getting this new stadium. And Don Van Natta has said, he said on ESPN Daily today, like, flatly, this is the thing that actually angers owners. It's not any of the things about culture and misconduct. It's just the fact that they need him to get a new stadium, and he's not good enough at business anymore, for various reasons we can discuss, to get that stadium.
What I find so profoundly depressing about this story, there's a lot of things that are depressing about it, is that the big headline, the revelation here, is that Dan Snyder has claimed to have dirt on owners. Not necessarily that he has dirt, he's denied it, in fact, and that used it as an intimidation tactic, which is the answer to the long-standing question of why didn't they get this guy out of the paint? Everybody dislikes this guy. It's in the story that everybody dislikes him.
Yep.
And to go back to what I said, what's so depressing about that is Dan Snyder has done exactly this to his own employees, but that didn't matter. Like the intimidation tactics, the bullying, the silencing, this all
Private
came out
eyes.
in the Washington Post's fantastic reporting on it, the government's, the House committee, their own investigation into it. But it's only when it's in fact turned back on the owners that it suddenly becomes an existential threat for him. I guess depressing, unsurprising, we're all pretty cynical about this stuff. And like Pablo said, it's ultimately nothing's going to happen until it actually affects their bottom line. But yeah, it moves the story away, and the story is kind of moved because we've so long acknowledged that Dan Snyder is not fit to be an NFL owner, has done many things that are worthy of criticism, to this debate of, well, what's it going to take? And I guess that sucks. It sucks. It sucks that we can't just talk about the thing, and that the thing itself is not enough. It has to be this conversation about the thing outside of the thing, which is what will actually motivate these owners to act.
I appreciate that you are fighting back some of my own cynicism, because when this headline popped up this morning and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know. And then I read the article looking for like a big bombshell. And I guess the bombshell was that all the things that I knew were being validated. Is like, it was a great job reporting by Don and Seth and Tisha. However, what they were doing was kind of confirming something that I think we all already knew and had become like numb to, is that they don't care about nothing but money. Like that's what it comes down to. And it's sad, it's disappointing, it's frustrating, but it always comes back to that when we're talking about issues of misconduct. Go ahead, Mina.
No, I will say, though, there is a point at which these two things intersect. The caring about the money, the fact that it's going to take something financial to actually spur action, and the things that Dan Snyder has been accused of. And that is actually what happened with the government. The story lays out, the difficulty that they're having in getting a new stadium and how it was basically a done deal. But what ultimately stopped that from happening was outrage, was public attention, was media coverage. So for every person who reads this and thinks nothing's going to happen, nothing matters, it's just a bunch of rich guys, well, actually, something did matter. The fact that the Washington Post did this incredible reporting, despite the fact that the NFL did their own investigation that they didn't release, that they basically covered up, that they were, had this weird agreement with Snyder, it mattered. It stopped something from happening. And I guess I just want to stress that part of the story, because that can get lost in all of the cynicism.
Yeah, and it does feel like a bit of a Rube Goldberg device in terms of like, how is it that the bottom line, how is it these owners get affected such that now we're having the conversation? And it is because there have been enough stories that have stoked public outrage that have affected not the owners directly, but the politicians who are otherwise going to say, here is a lot of public money towards the funding of this new building. And so it's really a story about, like, thank God we live in kind of a constitutional democracy where like there is a check and a balance, and that like journalism does matter, because it's not directly impacting the owners who are shameless. It's impacting the system that had been granting, Domonique, as you well know, free money to private businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's encouraging. That part of it is encouraging. I think to Mina's point, you can think back to like the FedEx pulling their money out, and like the minority owners like being outspoken. It reminds me generally of like, it's not a movement, but it reminds me of like how movements operate. And we often get criticized when there's like, say, someone having some demonstration or someone tweeting something. Like, that's not actually doing anything. But it's drops in the bucket when you are like contending with power, and those drops eventually add up to something. And not only is it about the stadium financing, it's about the like attractiveness of this team to like fans, and nobody wants to be associated with them. No one in this city that I live in is comfortable. Like the last several years, we're comfortable saying I'm a Redskins fan. It was something that was like shameful to say because of the name, and the fact that they weren't winning made it even more shameful. And now it's like no one wants to be out there in support of a team that's owned by a guy that has not had success and has been accused of horrible sexual misconduct. So like, I think that all this does matter. It gives me some hope, but it's still, we haven't gotten to a point where anyone's actually paid a price. I guess not getting the stadium built is a price to be paid, but John Gruden got fired. Paul Allen is out, but the rest of like Dan Snyder, the one who's the ringleader, is still running the team, like allegedly, just like not actually literally being there to run a team, but making decisions from the outside.
Yeah, Bruce Allen.
I want to highlight
Yep.
the quote that Alabaster just brought up from the story, which hasn't gotten a ton of attention, but a former Washington team executive who knew about the alleged sexual assault said if the details were made public, it would be the tipping point to Snyder's removal as an owner. I don't know if that's true. We have seen a multitude of examples of in the NFL, involving not just owners, players, executives, whatever, where allegations of sexual assault, however graphic, don't actually result in the sort of change that many of us want. I do know this, though. It must be made public. This says if all the details were made public. The last time the NFL looked into this with the Beth Wilkinson report, they didn't even write down the details. We know now that because of the government investigation, Mary Jo White is doing her own investigation. And if there's anything we in the media can demand out of all of this, it's that exactly what this executive is saying happens, which is that the details of that allegation come out. That is we can't make the owners do the right thing. We can't make the NFL even enforce their punishment, although we can call upon them to do this. But this is something where I actually think public outcry will have an impact on what happens.
Yeah, and this is referring to that 7-figure settlement that has been reported now that Dan Snyder paid to a woman who accused him of horrible things on a plane, on his plane, on his private jet. But yeah, I mean, look, I will say this for Dan Snyder, right? Like, this is a man who obviously is infamous for his paranoia. It does feel that like everyone around him would prefer for him to not be an owner anymore. So like, it's a weird thing where like he is, as per the story, behaving like a caged, cornered dog. And that is insane. But also he feels the walls closing in. And so the question is like, how much of a land war is Dan Snyder willing to fight on this? The answer to that, we know, as long as it takes.
So I wanted to lay out in this, but I do have one follow-up question. And that I realize that the owners just care about the bottom line and he's costing them money. But I do wonder how much a story like this galvanizes support against him, against Snyder, because he's literally like hiring private investigators to stalk some of them. He's brought, a huge PR disaster to the league. He's embarrassed all of them. Can a story like this change that it's not just about the bottom line, that it's about, their club also?
I think the point of this story, I mean, I don't know. We don't get too much into speculating about this, but I don't think this was based on the like level of the people who the reporters talked to. this wasn't a mistake. Like, they didn't uncover some documents. Like, there were executives and team owners who were willing to
Who
talk
wanted to talk
yeah,
about this.
to award-winning journalists. Like, they were not,
Yeah.
they had, this was intentional. And it was, the intention, I think, was to try to get the public in a position where we were on their side when they're pushing Dan out. So we'll see.
And that's, again, to the core question of what's it going to take? What really moves the needle? Well, the needle has been moving on this. I know it doesn't feel sufficient, but the fact that, as Domonique just said, these executives and owners are talking to these reporters, that they are complaining about them, that they're putting out suggestions. They're like, okay, how might we do this? Can we get him to sell it to his wife? Can we force it through the stadium thing? Can we, take away his ability to acquire debt? All of that is something that wasn't happening 5 years ago, frankly. And it is happening because of the public outcry, because of the reporting, because of the government getting involved. And I guess to anyone who, says, when stories like this, when there's like a sense of fatigue when it comes to a lack of consequences, and obviously that is something that happens a lot in America and issues beyond Dan Snyder and his own team, I just always try to put myself in the minds of the women and men who did step forward and came out and did so at great risk to themselves. It's important to them to know that we give a shit, that they didn't do it for nothing. And the way we do that is just by continuing to talk about it.
So if they vote him out, there's nothing he can do about it. I think the hope is that he will follow the Jerry Richardson path, where he's like, all right, it's too much drama, I'll sell it,
make a ton of money.
Yeah, make a ton of money and be done with it. But the interesting part about that to me is, when you get to a certain amount of money, I feel like there is no amount of money that will replace this in his life. The story talked a lot about how he's lonely and how he grew up a fan, and this was the crowning achievement of his life. Go ahead, Mina.
No, keep going. Yeah.
No, I mean, I just think that we haven't taken into account how miserable and isolated he is. And I think often you try a couple different strategies in a situation like this. It's you want to make the alternative a lot more attractive than the status quo, so they decide to do it. But I don't think that you can possibly make the alternative more attractive than the status quo for him. So they're going to have to force him out, which will risk everyone being exposed, which I think can scare everyone off.
I think that's not a really important point, though, because I think sometimes we view consequences as a binary. Either he's selling the team or he's not selling the team. And there are a lot of other things that this dude did not want to happen that have happened, including the revelation of all of this information that he has fought tooth and nail and continues to fight. So simply saying, well, if he hasn't, we haven't compelled, if there's not been a sale, if the owners haven't gotten him out, this has all been a failure, is actually a pretty simplistic and I think incomplete appraisal of the consequences of all of this reporting. Putting stuff in the public eye matters. I mean, it's something we talk about a lot with issues when it comes to sports and ownership and all of that. It matters that it's out there, even if it doesn't lead to the ultimate consequence that so many people desire in this case.
No, we know the pressure points. I mean, the pressure point psychologically for him is obviously the team, but the vulnerability he has is the public opinion's impact on funding a stadium. And that's where he messed up. He waited too long. He waited too long, and now he's stuck.
Yeah. Last question before we move on to some other stuff is said in the article that he believed that all he needed was the right quarterback. And essentially what he was saying is if they were a successful franchise, he thinks that he could have gotten the funding and all this other stuff. No one would turn on him. This team that's in one of the wealthiest metro areas in all of the country is not in the top 5 of revenue generation in the league. He believes all that would change if he just had the right quarterback and they won a lot. And I want to say no, but I'm not sure that that's true. If they were competitive as hell for the last 3 years.
No, it's about, I mean, the new stadium is a proxy for just more people buying tickets, which then get shared via revenue sharing with the owners who want him out now. And maybe he's not wrong about that. Maybe if they had, I don't know, fill in the blank good quarterback here instead of Carson Wentz, that's actually plausible.
Oh, and also I think public opinion would be less universal against him if the football team had more success. But Domonique, I do think because he is an owner and not a coach or a GM, the impact of the success of the team is a little bit mitigated, especially at this point. I think even if things were to turn around and they did find the quarterback, I think it would be too late to turn the tide, at least based on me, putting my finger up to the wind and seeing how Washington fans tend to talk about him.
All right, we've talked in depth about this, and I love that Alabaster has been quiet the entire time. But now I feel bad. So
The
let's
lone
bring him
Washington
back
fan
in
our midst,
I know.
by the way.
I know.
It's a shameful admission, but it's true. All right, guys, let's pivot to some of the exciting slate for this weekend's football. And when I was looking at these games, they're marquee matchups, but they also have like interesting spreads in how the public in Vegas views these games. And the first one is something I never thought I would see, which is Patrick Mahomes being a dog at home. And does that make sense to you that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are 2.5-point underdogs at home against the Bills and Josh Allen?
Yeah, this is like the other way in which you don't want to have that dog in you, I guess. This is rare. This has never happened before, right? So
Is, home field still considered like 3 points? If so, they think they're 5.5 points better than them on a neutral site, right? Like that seems shocking to me. Hello, Lenny, young Linus. That seems shocking to me. I readily admit that I believe that the Bills are a better team, but I also admit that it's Patrick Mahomes. So like I don't know, like betting against him seems stupid.
5.5, if that's what we're going with. I would be curious to see, by the way, if that's changed, because home field advantage has declined in recent years in the NFL, so maybe it isn't quite what it used to be. Feels a little high. I know neutral field. If I was asked, I would probably go Bills by like 2. Neutral field in any situation. I think they are the more complete team. I think they have the better defense. I think the 4-man rush is very good. And I think like the offense, they're not more balanced, but they're more explosive. Domonique Foxworth. We talked. I just say your full name though. So weird. Yeah, right. We talked about it
because you're in promotional mode. That's why you said it.
We talked about it on the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny.
We also talked about it on the Domonique Foxworth show featuring Alabaster.
And now we're talking about it on Debatable Television Show, unfortunately featuring me, I guess.
Not on the daily.
But you mentioned something interesting, right? Which does feel like it's kind of the story of this matchup, is that since the last time these teams played, they have both kind of constructed themselves to win this game, right? I mean, like if you're Mahomes and you were the best quarterback against the blitz last year, now guess what? You're facing a team that doesn't need to blitz you, right? Von Miller. Like, I just wonder how much of that is going to change the story of this, just the Von Miller part of it.
Well, we just saw the Raiders 4-man rush give the Chiefs hell in the first half of that game. And the Bills pass rush, the Raiders edge rushers are probably comparable, but as a whole, the depth that the Bills have on their defensive line and also on the interior is better. The Chiefs are different from how they were the last time. Like the Bills are kind of the same team offensively as when these teams met in the playoffs, but the Chiefs are very different. They do run the ball well. They can string together these long, stable drives, but the receivers don't get separation the way that they used to. So it's hard for me to I guess subscribe to the idea that like they're capable of the same fireworks. But again, I think that the offense is as efficient as ever. So that's why I'm just not comfortable picking against them to that extent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the firework capability, I think, is what will make you feel like everyone is or feel like a team is in every game at all times. And even though the Chiefs were down 14, they came back in that game, but it doesn't feel like against a team like the Bills that's something that is likely to happen without the explosiveness of Tyreek Hill. The running game is a great addition that I'm sure the Chiefs are jealous of the Bills are jealous of being able to manufacture a running game without putting your quarterback at risk. But that ain't the same as going 80 yards with Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs. It's a lot more, which is a lot more concerning. It's a lot more challenging. The last argument for the Chiefs is when you are in the conference finals every year, or conference finals, still thinking about basketball, when you're in the conference championship every year and the Super Bowl multiple times, I think it's possible that you enter a lot of games. Like ho-hum, and we don't see the real Chiefs except for like opening day in big games. Like
Yeah.
I believe there's a legitimate
Okay,
chance
wait. I
that
love
we're going to see a different version of the Chiefs, a different coach version, a different game plan version,
Totally
a different
agree.
This
intensity.
is
Like,
it's my favorite take that keeps on recurring on this show, which is the NBA does infect the NFL in this way too, Dominique. There is some sense of let's save the best
Load
version of
management.
ourselves.
I
for the
believe Andy Reid
postseason.
does that.
yeah,
No,
well,
well,
he
not just the,
absolutely does.
especially because the Chiefs. Okay, so Andy Reid is an extremely creative offensive mind, and we have seen throughout, not just with Patrick Mahomes, but generally him break out wacky shit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cussed twice on this. I don't know if we can cuss. Wacky
We can.
stuff on in
As long
big
as it's an
moments.
even number, and they cancel each other out.
And yeah, I could absolutely see him pulling out some wild stops in this game, no question. I just wish I felt better about the Chiefs secondary, Domonique.
Yeah.
So that's the
not
thing
great.
that's the thing, right? Like they supposedly fixed it in the offseason. That was their like to-do list check, and then they get we get what they showed against the Raiders.
Yeah, well, that's an extenuating circumstance. The problem is the Chiefs, the Bills have a guy like that too. So
Right.
I think the real question is, are they good enough to stop them in too high, to stop them from passing? Because I still think the Bills could probably still effectively pass the ball against too high coverages against most teams. If the Chiefs can stop them from doing that, that's a check in their column. But then the problem is when the Chiefs did that against the Raiders were gashing them in through the ground game for 10, 12, 20-yard rushes. And the Bills, who can't run the ball, we'll find out
Yeah,
if they can gash the Chiefs in a situation. So I don't know. It's a lot up to question. We'll see what happens on Sunday.
If you're the Chiefs, that's what you want. You want them to play like you. You want them to you want to keep everything in front of you. You want that Bills run game, which has been super impressive, to be more present than it's been. You also want Chris Jones, who's still one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL, to take advantage of what I do believe is one of the Bills' very few weaknesses, which is the guard position. If you can do all of those things and kind of force the Bills to play tight rather than letting any of those explosive happen, I think that they can stay in it.
And on the other side, the Chiefs have been effective at running the ball even when they don't have the blocking advantage. Yeah. So, another weakness is the youth of the cornerbacks of the Bills. And And so, if they can force the Bills into single high and Patrick Mahomes can attack those edges, that is a terrifying thing, I think, for the Bills. And we might see an explosive version of the Chiefs.
If the Bills pass rush doesn't win, the Chiefs absolutely can obliterate them through the air. The Steelers went after Kyrie Elam. I don't know if you saw that, pretty hard last week. If you think Kenny Pickett can do that, let me tell you something about Patrick Mahomes and some of these Chiefs pack. And I'm not sure, by the way, with the injuries that they have at the safety position, that they have a real answer for Travis Kelce. If they can get some of those matchups. So it's a good game. It's a good game. That's my analysis, Mina. It's a good game. There you go.
All right.
It's a good one.
I feel like we spent too much time on that. We got 2 more good games to get to.
I just want to know what young quarterback Domonique was like, but I guess we can proceed.
All right.
Perfect.
Next question. Do you agree with Vegas that the 4-1 Giants should be 6-point underdogs at home against the 3-2 Ravens?
Yes.
6-point under. I've listened to you guys on your various platforms talk about how, I actually do want to find out where Domonique feels on the Brian Daboll spectrum now, because Mina, I just heard you talk about how Brian Daboll clearly is the coach of the year, right? And I get the argument. I've heard that now from multiple smart people, the favorite for coach of the year. But a 6-point underdog against the Ravens feels like maybe he doesn't come out of this week feeling like the favorite for coach of the year.
Yeah, I think the 6-point underdog is evidence to the fact that he probably is the favorite right now because people don't think this team is very good. Unless you think that Wink, having spent enough time, the defensive coordinator spent enough time with Lamar Jackson, he knows the answer. And actually, some people would argue that the all-out blitz is the answer to attack Lamar Jackson ever since that Dolphins game last season. Yeah, I know that Lamar has answered those questions this season, but if that's not what you're going to do, what are you going to do against him? It's kind of like Lamar is incredibly impressive and consistent. And then sometimes he just throws a pass that's just wildly inaccurate. And so that's not something that you can coach your defense to do. I guess that would be an argument against the zero coverage is like you want to make him be methodical all the way down the field. The more attempts you make him make, the more chances you have that he's going to have one of those errant throws that get intercepted. But the real scary part is on the other side. It feels like the way that the Giants score is not sustainable. Their drives are a lot of Daniel Jones scrambling and give the ball to Saquon and cross your fingers.
They're the little Giants, man. They're gonna run the annexation of Puerto Rico in this game. They will do what, and this is why I love the Giants. By the way, is they will do whatever it takes. Like, oh, you want us to run Wildcat like 5 times?
YOLO.
Red zone, yeah, right. Yeah, I think that the line is a little bit disrespectful. I think given the fact that the Ravens probably won't have Rashad Bateman, the Wink Martindale factor. The fact that the Giants' offense right now, while somewhat limited, is creative, and also they're very good at running the ball, and I don't think the Ravens' defense is particularly great at stopping the run. But the discrepancy in talent between like a few key positions is just too significant in this one for me to feel comfortable calling for an upset. But I could see them covering.
I mean, okay, so Lamar,
Didn't they already...
obviously, the best running quarterback in the league. Yeah, thank you. Confirming 374 number, just in case you were wondering, is he still that good? Yeah. Jalen Hurts.
I love how different him and Daniel Jones look running the ball. I guess the biggest difference, this isn't like particularly cute, is that when Lamar runs the ball, I just assume he's going to be fine because of his movement abilities, and I always assume Daniel Jones is going to get the absolute crap beaten out of him every time he runs the ball. He's fast, he's strong, he has great straight line speed, but he doesn't have the wiggle that Lamar has, and it's kind of scary.
For the record, I think he looks like a guy who's running on a hardwood floor in socks where he's about to tumble forward at any moment.
Risky
good.
business.
We got that
a
on the
little
record.
risky business, yes.
Last football question. Do you expect the Eagles to roll the Cowboys on Sunday night?
The only advantage that you could argue that the Cowboys have is their D-line against the Eagles' offensive line. The Eagles' offensive line is actually great, but injuries could put them in position where the Cowboys could win there. So, like, even if the Cowboys win there, the problem is, how are the Cowboys going to score enough points? At some point, there are games where at some point you're going to have to ask the quarterback to do something. And block punts, sack fumbles don't happen every week. And the Eagles can stop the run. They have a lot of talent, and they're well coached on offense and defense. They are going to force Cooper Rush to be more than a game manager. And unless they can get a bunch of short fields for him, I think, the Eagles, I mean, I don't think they roll them because the Cowboys have a good defense, but the Eagles will not be in jeopardy of losing this game at any time.
I was talking about the Eagles' offensive line versus the Dallas defensive line on my podcast, and I tried to make a Pacific Rim comp, and my guest didn't get it. I'm so glad that I'm on now with
you
Pablo.
You have come home.
Because, Pablo, what does this matchup remind you of?
Oh, just like two Jaegers going at it. Just
versus two kaiju.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, the question is, who is the Jaeger and who's the kaiju?
That's a great question. I would say that
Domonique,
the kaiju are the Cowboys pass rush, and the Jaegers are the Eagles offensive line, and that ultimately is why I think the Eagles are going to win this, because as good as the Cowboys pass rush is, that defensive line has not been challenged by like a dominant run game. You're super aggressive and scary, but you can run on this defensive line. And I mean, shoot, we talked about Daniel Jones and his mobility. He put up like 80 yards on the Cowboys, and Saquon averaged 5.8 yards per carry. Here comes Jalen Hurts to town. And I think that's going to be an issue because they might not get into a situation where they get to tee off on him in the pass rush.
Alabaster, have you seen Pacific Rim?
I have not. I'm going to go to Dominique's house and watch it with him.
Come on over, buddy.
All right, you guys do that. But also, before we do that, okay, Mina, thank you for your service here, but we're going to make even more terrible financial decisions, which we could probably use your help on, but just the two of us now, so. All right, we've gotten to the part of the show, Domonique, where we pretend like we're not going to make terrible financial decisions on behalf of our audience, because this is part of our job, apparently.
And we have to get a disclaimer or something. I feel like whenever you get financial advice, you have to tell them
you know what?
This is not advice. Don't sue us. So that's a thing.
Just flash a giant paragraph of legal disclaimer over our faces right now. That should cover us.
We're done.
Alabaster, what do you want us to legally analyze?
All right, guys. So I'm going to give you some NBA futures, and you're going to tell me where I, or you guys, if you agree with the bet, will lose our money. The first one, the Clippers, the super team that's never done anything. They're the favorites to win the title this year. And you know what? I sort of agree with them. But will I be lighting my money on fire if I bet the Clippers to win the title at plus 550?
So this is shocking to me, Domonique. Really? Wait, the Clippers are favored more than the Warriors are. That's what the first sort of data point here I've received from you, Alabaster, is. That is okay, because like this is sort of the hipster pick, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's
so when
what
Vegas
that's
goes
exactly
hipster, what am I supposed to do here?
I don't know what the opposite of hipster is, but it's whatever that tie is you have on. So you are completely prepared to go
Quincy
opposite of hipster. My Quincy House, by the way. Anyway, the point is, how can it's baffling. I heard lots of people talking about the Clippers are going to be healthy, and like you were saying, it felt like the hipster kind of cool guy pick, but because they haven't actually ever done anything together, and we haven't seen Kawhi in what feels like forever, and playoff P is a thing that moved away from mocking to like a little bit more legitimate, but still mocking, and like I don't know, it feels like a reach where normally people, at least when it comes to betting, that are like show it first, but I guess all hipsters are making bets.
It feels like people are like, oh man, you had to have really seen Kawhi Leonard at the small nightclub known as the Toronto Raptors Arena, whose name is forgettable to me because that's how small the club is. But this is about Kawhi. This is truly about Kawhi, and this is about the fact that the last time we saw. Oh God. Okay, there are two options here, right? There are two options to spin this into a good decision. One option is we talk about John Wall, who has, first off, like opened up to the world in ways that actually are like really significant and interesting, having to do with psychology and his life. The second thing we could do is just throw up that photo on the screen right now of Kawhi Leonard's like legs, because that's the thing that I last saw with him. And if that dude is healthy, he is the Terminator. I just don't know if that's enough for them to be favored over the Warriors. So
well, I'm an amateur to the gambling thing, so I believe that plus 550 still means that we're getting, like, we bet $100, we get 550. So I mean, yes. I guess we're not necessarily setting our money on fire if we realize that. I think we both agree that they are a legitimate chance to be champions, but I guess I don't think they. So you can get better odds for the Warriors. You get better odds for Giannis and the Bucks. You could get better odds for Philadelphia. Like, I almost kind of feel like I'm a little bit more confident in the Nets, which I know sounds crazy. Like, there's so many other teams that I guess you're betting on the coach if you go with the Clippers. I've been told Ty Lue is like Bill Belichick, right? That's a thing. That's
the best in playoff series adjuster in the NBA is Ty Lue. The sweatiest owner in the NBA is Steve Ballmer. And I'm sweaty thinking about trying to put money on this, Alabaster. I'm like a no thanks on this. Sorry, I will be mainstream lame on this.
I'm a yes thanks. Let's go.
Okay, we'll bet half a unit on that one. All right. This one I actually feel more passionate on, and that is the odds of the Celtics finishing the 3 seed or worse in the East is plus 115. And this is a bet because the East is loaded, and the Celtics, you know, they don't have their head coach this season. So I want to hammer this one.
3 seed or worse, plus 15. Bet $100 to make $15. Okay.
To me, this is about like evaluating team psychology, because I think that we all accept, and maybe this will be different, we all accept that NBA teams, it's not a ton of adjustments in season. And teams who have made it as deep as the Celtics have in the playoffs all the way to the championship tend not to be aiming for like high seeds in the playoffs, particularly when the playoffs or the conferences, both conferences, are as deep as they are. So I think the argument is not that they are the third most talented team. The argument is they have something to prove, or they really think home field or home court advantage matters. Like, I don't know. I think they're talented enough to do it, or we're arguing that the rest of these teams don't care about it. Like, I guess, what is the assumption that you're asking me to accept by making this bet?
Right. I mean, the question that I'm asking myself to make it even easier is just like, do I think the Celtics, who were in the NBA Finals last year, who added Malcolm Brogdon, who was the point guard that they needed? I loved that move, Domonique, because Marcus Smart, for all of his gifts, was an agent of great chaos, as he almost always is. They actually have a guy who will do the things, move the ball, set up their two stars, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, of course. Like, I like that. The question is, like, given the fact that Time Lord is hurt, given the fact that they don't have a head coach and we have no idea how to legally discuss that without sounding like idiots, is that just too much chaos for us to think that they're actually as good as their talent should suggest? And I don't want to touch this either, man.
First, in this bet, I think it's important. Do you think that they are in the top 3 as far as talent is concerned in the East? Because I think that's a reasonable conversation. You have to think that they're in the top 3 first.
Philly and Brooklyn, to me, are 1-2. And the
Milwaukee.
Celtics.
Yeah, Milwaukee.
Milwaukee's 3 to me.
Milwaukee's 3.
That's my take. That's my hot take for this NBA season. I think Milwaukee's the 3rd best team in the East. So in that case, like, the Celtics are a plausible 4 seed. But
I don't like this bet at all.
I don't like
too many
this.
variables.
We
don't know anything about this coach.
Okay.
We don't know anything about. Like,
here's the rule. Here's the test, Dominic. Here's the test. It's the ESPN app alert test. I don't want to make a bet where I am just going to be terrified of every alert that I'm going to get because it plausibly might be about Ime Udoka.
Yeah.
No thanks.
We didn't know Ime was a good coach.
Yes, he
his
was.
first year, and he was. So we might be having the same situation. But I mean, this is not. Why is Alabama only bringing us bets that are incredibly interesting to discuss? Good job, Alabama. I figured it out as I was talking.
Yeah, I was
All
like,
right, guys,
touche.
I got another brain buster. This one, I looked at, and initially I was like, no way I would bet this. But then I looked at the teams in the West, and that conference is loaded. Barely anyone is tanking other than Utah and San Antonio. And the bet here is for the Lakers to partake in the play-in tournament. So that means they're 7-10. And it's minus 105. They're favorites to make the play-in, to be in that seed range. And I think that's fair.
Yeah.
This feels like a mutual fund, Dominique. This feels like one of those things where it's like, it's minus 105. It's like, all right.
Return's not great, but you know it's
return's not great. Yes, but I have confidence in the fundamentals of how mediocre the Lakers are.
I mean, so you could lose both ends. Like, there's a chance that AD gets hurt and LeBron actually ages more aggressively. There's a chance that you could lose on the down end also, which we're not even considering. Like, I think the argument.
I think that's more likely than the top end opposite scenario.
So yeah, so it's return. So they actually think this is going to happen. So we're not getting extra money like we did in those previous bets. I don't like this at all. This stinks. 7-10.
But the play. Okay. So if the fear is that they're actually going to miss the play-in field entirely, there are reasons to think that they're actually not good enough to do this. I mean, Anthony Davis is saying he's going to play the 5. He says that every year. He has said in the third person, I believe that our coach knows that AD wants to play the 4, which is just an amazing. Pablo, they know that Alabaster knows that Pablo Torre wants to be the 1 box. Like, okay,
always is.
What an asshole.
Now I know. Asshole. Now I'm going to force you out of the 1 box. I don't know when. I don't know if it's today or whenever we have the ability to do this, but I want your ass out of the 1 box until we humble you a little bit, Pablo.
Do not edit this. Do not edit this. This is contractually negotiated.
Oh, gosh. I do think that the most interesting thing about the Lakers right now is what's happening with Russell Westbrook. Like, and him and the team, he seems to be wearing the Lakers jerseys while on the court, but he does not seem to be a part of the team. He's making statements with his behavior. Like, he is making a big show of demonstrating to everyone that he will not come to the free throw huddle when Pat Bev waves him over. He will not get in the pregame circle when everyone is getting ready for the game to start. clear that he is like, this is my job. I'm going to do exactly what is required of me. The rest of it is on you guys.
I want Russell Westbrook's fashion innovation when he's walking into the arena, Alabaster, to just be a literal punch card. Bring in a punch card, time in, time out, just here, so I don't get fined.
I guess the one thing about that I want to know is like, what does he think he's gaining? Or is this just like a show of pride? Because
I think it's pride. I think this is a good question.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely just about, it's about how he wants to be able to look himself in the mirror.
Okay.
It's just like, I can't, Russell Westbrook, like this is where I empathize, right? That dude, legit Hall of Famer, Patrick Beverley, is a glorified troll. And the idea that he's trying to be leader guy is just like, this is insulting. It's just insulting. And we know that the alert that's going to happen on the ESPN app, I'm like accidentally becoming an ad for our mobile technology. But the ad, that's the app alert that's going to come across is Lakers trade Russell Westbrook alongside the 2 draft picks in the next couple of years, the way that LeBron James clearly negotiated quietly, speaking of things that were semi-contractually guaranteed, for, Indiana Pacers. In which case, I do think they're a more likely play-in team, actually. So I'm feeling good about this one, actually.
I guess haven't taken into consideration that they might improve throughout the course of the season. But there's one last possibility that I didn't present, is that Russell Westbrook is actually showing restraint. And there are some places that I'm like, I can't go there. If I go there, I might do something stupid. And it's possible that he's like, you know what? I can't get in this huddle, because if I get in this huddle with this man, I might do something stupid. So there's a positive spin on what he's doing. He is like, I know myself.
Yes. No, he's actually looking at himself in the mirror and convincing good Russ to take over evil Russ that wants to absolutely deck Patrick Beverley in the face.
All right, guys, we got one more bet. And this one, spicy odds here. The MVP is hard to predict. It's a narrative award. You know what narrative I like?
What's that?
Zion's back. Zion's lost weight. The Pelicans could end up being a top 4 seed in the West. And his odds are plus 2,200. He's 9th in the odds. And this is someone who's been historically efficient. And historical efficiency, that can win MVPs. We saw that with Jokic. We saw that with Giannis. Convince me why I shouldn't waste my money on Zion to win MVP.
Brandon Ingram?
I would choose to use the words that you started with. Zion's back. Like, what are the chances that he has a back injury? Like, what are the chances that parts of his body we've already had this just this week. We're talking about another leg thing, another like lower body thing to Zion. I think there's a really enticing. I like the odds here. I like the odds, admittedly. I believe the narrative pitch, Domonique, is convincing. The Pelicans are going to be good. He's the best player. It's just a matter of like,
so this is
play enough.
This is $100. We get 2,200 back.
Yeah.
Is that what this means? Oh yeah, I like these odds. I mean, it's worth the wager. Zion is talented enough to do it, and at those odds,
team
I think it's
so fun too. I mean, it's the thing of like, it's the perfect combination though of like team that's so much more than Zion, right? They made a playoff run last year. Jose Alvarado became this guy who now haunts Chris Paul, right? Brandon Ingram, who you mentioned, is like a legitimate, like, I think he's a top 3 player on a championship team. I think he could be number 3, right? CJ McCollum might be number 2, but you need Zion to be number 1. And maybe Ingram's number 2, actually.
And that's the
point is they have the talent. They have it.
The challenging part to me about it is no one has ever been like a surprise MVP on their team. Like if you are MVP, it's a lot like the Heisman Trophy. Is your coaches and your teammates have to decide at the beginning of the season, kind of like, everything's going to go through him. And it feels like Zion has not been healthy enough, and this team has been effective without it all working through him. I'm not sure that they decide, you know what? Let's go all in on Zion.
They should
be the reason.
They really should, though. He's the best player on the team, despite all of it. He is the guy, if they run offense through him. He's played point Zion before.
No.
Alabaster, you know this. No. It was so beautiful.
No.
It was so beautiful.
No.
Why?
Because they're not trying to win an MVP with Zion. If there's anyone who's going to have their minutes curtailed, and be like protected, it's going to be the guy who can't seem to stay healthy for a course of a full season. So not only do we need Zion to play really well, we need him to not get hurt, and we need this team to to lean in on him.
Alabaster, I do want to throw another hipster name at you though, and come on, man, Herb Jones. I love Herb Jones. Oh, true. This is a lesson for NBA hipsters. Just say Herb Jones and just go.
Potential all defense guy, Herb Jones.
Blocking threes, rangy, guard everything. Herb Jones. We're gonna go broke. We're probably gonna go broke. Oh no!
Okay.
No!
Ah, glory. There it is, right where I'm supposed to be. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'm the champion. Just like I beat you in Quincy on a ping pong table.